turn on the. All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:04. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Number 55, meeting number 55. I hope everybody had a very nice Thanksgiving. And we have minutes from November 16th in front of us. Any changes, corrections, additions, deletions?
I have two.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
Yes, one was that the town manager and myself attended an event at Westport Library about their renovation, just for a little bit more detail there. And I also wanted to have noted my concerns over having a swing space at Wittenberry Mall.
Okay. Any other?
I'll move approval.
Moved by
Second.
Lois, seconded by Bob Ike. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Anybody abstaining? All right, we are unanimous. Thank you. All right. Under new business, we have first a project update from our architect, Richard.
Yes, thank you. So we are continuing with construction documents, CDs, and working out a lot of details. We are going back to inland wetlands and planning and zoning this month. We're also going to be going back to the design review board. In fact, we have that meeting tomorrow. So we want to be able to respond to some of the design review comments that were given to us at the last meeting a month ago. And if I can share my screen, I can show what we're planning to show to the design review board. I believe only Prosser is on their agenda. In our prior meetings, we were prepared to talk about both Prosser and McMahon. And I believe that, you know, the Planning and Zoning Commission, which refers the matters, the applications to the design review board, has that discretion, or the design review board has that discretion. But I believe they're only going to continue the discussion on the Prosser design. And so what I'm going to do, if I could share my screen, is show you, oops, that's the wrong one. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the wrong date. It should be December 1st, but this we published before we made that correction. So understand that this is the wrong date, but it's going to be for tomorrow. So what we're going to do is show them this update on the site plan. And I just want to point out a few things here. You may recall that we had a dumpster located here in the northeast corner of the Prosser site that has now been relocated. We did talk about this previously. The dumpster will be located here on the Riley parking lot. It's at the bottom of the footbridge from Prosser. We've also talked about having a smaller bin, maybe a staging bin placed here, and then or a small vehicle that could pick up the trash on a daily basis or weekly basis. I'm not sure how frequently it'll be filled, but then it could be brought over by a vehicle to this dumpster area located here. And this location was selected by our landscape architect, Richter and Segan, as probably the best location where a truck can circle around, pick up the items and then leave. Once we got a new home for the dumpsters, there's really no need for the access drive anymore. So the terrain on the western side of the Prosser footprint is going to be naturally landscaped. And I think that will be an improvement in the surroundings of the building. You may recall that we submitted an application for encroachment on the MDC right-of-way, which is located right in this location. We still need to pursue or continue with that application. The application was submitted a little over a month ago by SLR, maybe it was a month and a half ago. And MDC acknowledged that the application was received. It's still under review. But we can't eliminate that encroachment application because we still need to provide, they need to see, because we have a bridge over there right away, they need to see that detail. And we're also very, very close to the edge of their right of way, and we'll need to encroach temporarily on that right of way as we excavate for the footings that will be immediately adjacent to their right of way. So that will, we're still waiting for their technical comments. There is a potential future pedestrian connection to the neighbor's parcel here, the shopping center parcel. The design review board, and I think subsequently, I can't remember whether it was inland wetlands or planning and zoning, also were looking for that kind of pedestrian connection. So that's being shown on the plan now. There are also some trees that were very close to our lot line, and there were some other mature trees located here that were pointed out by wetlands. So that's been illustrated here, and that required some respacing of the parking stalls in order to create this kind of island to preserve those trees. Another item that the design review board commented on was the approach to the library, this public space here. They wanted to see more details. They suggested that we add plantings here and maybe some seating as well. So we've done that. I'll show you a detail momentarily. Okay. They also asked about the bridge details. Oh, let me go back to that previous slide. One of the items that was asked for by the Inland Wetlands Commission was changing the topography of this area. According to the town engineer, they wanted to make sure that we had two flood issues addressed. One of which is staying out of the floodway. The floodway is defined by these heavy dotted lines. This is the western side. This is the eastern side. So we weren't having any obstructions here, but the town engineer also said we need to, or our engineers needed to do an evaluation on flow. So what they asked us to do is reconsider the topography that we had here. We were raising this side of the Riley parcel in order to minimize the ramp length here. But because of their requirement to lower this topography, we have to extend the ramp length. So what our strategy now is to bring this footbridge down to approximately here, where you can then continue either down a set of steps or a lower ramp, which would be handicapped accessible. The whole ramp is handicapped accessible, but because you can see now we need to make the transition from this previous elevation down to a lower elevation, we do need to extend or provide this access ramp to the bottom of the footbridge. Other questions that were asked by the design review board and also by wetlands was, what does this bridge look like? How is it built? And so we have now included in this presentation some details. And so at the western end, which is where the bridge connects to the porch, that's the first floor elevation here, and then a gradual slope down to this location. And then what is the revised topography here, which we'll have to correct in a subsequent revision, and then the access ramp on the other side of this footbridge. We're introducing a support a concrete bridge abutment approximately here. This would be outside of the floodway. But what it does do is it reduces this span. Previously, we were spanning all the way from the building to the toe of the bridge without any support at all. That affects the cost of this bridge. If we introduce a span at some point that does not occur in the floodway, that support actually reduces the amount of structure that's required to make this overall span. So we've introduced that. And the construction of this bridge is basically a steel structure. The steel structure will have railings on the side, these steel members that will actually function as a balustrade on each side. And the surface material is detailed as ipe planking, interspersed with some metal slip-resistant strips. So that's basically the details of that. One item here is also I want to point out is illumination of the walkway will be from underneath the major top chord of this truss. It's a truss that's divided, as you can see here, with diagonals and vertical members. The top chord of this truss, which is the uppermost structural component, is a tube. This is what it looks like in section. And underneath the tube will be lighting. This lighting will be the way we illuminate the walking surface here. So there's no structure or pole. It's all very cleverly concealed underneath. Another question that was asked by the design review board is, are there going to be photovoltaic panels on the roof? This diagram illustrates what we're showing in our construction documents now. It does show an array of photovoltaics, but this is just a preliminary layout. I know that you are considering getting a PPA contract in place, and the PPA vendor will actually submit their proposed layout. It may be a little bit different, and that's what will be finally incorporated into the drawings. It's also important to have the bidders who are bidding on the Prosser building, the roofing subcontractor in particular, be aware that eventually there will be photovoltaic panels on the roof, and that there needs to be a coordination meeting between that roofing subcontractor and the PPA vendor to make sure that whatever is done for the photovoltaics and any penetration through the roof membrane for conduit comply with the roofing manufacturer and the roofing installers systems. We don't want the roofing membrane to be, the warranty for the roofing membrane to be voided by any activity by the photovoltaic installation. So as soon as a PPA vendor is identified, we would like to have coordination discussions with them so that we can develop this a little bit more. But for the bidding purposes, for Downs' bidding purposes, we want to put a big note on our drawings that says this is a preliminary array for the roofing subcontractors, structural contractors, etc., to be aware of this, and that the final layout may be adjusted depending on who the PPA vendor is. But anyway, this explains to the design review board where the photovoltaics are going to be placed. It'll be very low profile, and they won't be visible near as we can tell from the surrounding areas. There was also a question about the entry plaza. So we've now included some details in our submission to the design review board, and I'm sure the questions will come up during planning and zoning as well. A plaza that is concrete and brick pavers. You can see there's a pattern here. The horizontal and vertical lines represent the installation of pavers. There's, in the concrete fields, there's a control joint or construction joint, as you can see here. One of the things that we were asked is if we can add some planting material. We have shown that now adjacent to the entry ramp that leads up to the landing just in front of the entry to the library. And so we've now more illustrated those plantings. And we're also showing the ramp. And this also will have a very similar lighting detail in the rail of that ramp to illuminate the incline walkway at the ramp. And then people on the design review board couldn't comment on lighting because we didn't show them any lighting. So what we're going to do is provide this diagram that shows where the light fixture is going to go and what they will look like. So we have a need to illuminate the parking lot on the Riley site, and we need to illuminate the walkway that leads from Mountain Avenue into the parking area here. And that also is the entrance into the vestibule at the lowest level. We also need to illuminate the plaza in front. So there are some light fixtures proposed here, some light poles. So we have these kinds of fixtures on poles located here. And then we have light fixtures located on bollards. These are low bollards, maybe 36 or 42 inches high, to illuminate the walkway here that leads to the building. And we also have taller poles to illuminate the parking lot. These are what the parking lot light fixtures look like. When we were having conversations with the town engineer, he said, look, we're doing some light fixtures on other areas in town, such as the town green and the streets alongside it. There's happens to be a light pole that's located approximately here near the northeast corner of the Prosser site. And here's what it looks like. It looks as a much more traditional appearance. And he asked if, as part of this project, that light fixture could be replaced. I don't see why not. The light fixtures are actually furnished by Eversource. It's an item that they stock. It also is something that they service or maintain. And the cost of that pole will actually be borne as part of the utility cost that the town pays regularly to Eversource. I believe this might be the last slide. Any questions?
Questions for Richard? Lois.
Richard, can you describe how kids will be prevented from falling off the bridge as they cross it?
Sure. So the railing, I believe, is 42 inches high, or maybe it's even 48 inches high. Let me go back. There's a dimension here. Oops. Not very good at this here. So if I could zoom in here, there's a dimension here, which is 3'8". That's 44 inches, which is sufficient for children to be kept on the bridge. And then in this space on both sides, spanning from strut to strut, from vertical element to vertical element, would be balustrade, which are horizontal, these bars that are installed, and they're 4 inches on center. So it's a very narrow opening, much smaller than a child's head could possibly get through.
You all set, Lois? I guess so. Okay, Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this, Rizard. I was just wondering, the lights, was there discussion about the fixtures that are currently on the town green, really the consistency between the town green, Philly Park, the library? They should all really be the same light fixtures. So that existing post there, is that the same as the light fixture that's in Philly, in the town green and at Philly Park?
I personally did not inspect the light fixtures on the town green, but according to the town engineer, Jonathan Tisi, this is the fixture that was.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like it. So are you saying that those are the fixtures that would be used, or are you saying that these other light fixtures?
The other light fixtures are what we're proposing and what we're showing on our plans and specs at the moment. This particular fixture, there's a light pole here, approximately here,
Mhm.
the street light that Jonathan TC would like us to have replaced, and maybe make that part of the project. That was the extent of the conversation with regard with this style of light.
Okay, so the design review hasn't discussed the light fixtures yet, or they?
No, they want
Okay.
to know more about what we were proposing, so that's why I'm bringing this to tomorrow
Right.
design review board meeting.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to, belabor this, but we really shouldn't be using different light fixtures than what the ones that are on the town green in Philly Park are all new, relatively new, and we
Yeah.
shouldn't be using a different set of fixtures on the Prosser. So I would really, strongly suggest that the design review committee know that the lights, that are being proposed are not the same.
Right, so I know next to nothing about this existing street light in terms of
Mhm.
lamp efficiency and photometrics.
Right. Now, I could understand those shorter, I forgot what you call them, the bollards.
The bollards here.
Bollards. Yeah, I could understand those being, a separate fixture because it's not, it's closer to the ground. It's to provide lighting for the walkways, et cetera. But the plaza lights and the parking lights, I mean, I don't know, maybe the parking lights need to be brighter than these light fixtures will allow. I don't know that, but
So
I just don't want to see different light fixtures all over the town center.
this is going to be a subject of review, not only design review board tomorrow, but also will be an item of discussion at the planning and zoning meeting. So one of the things that planning and zoning requires is a photometric analysis, an actual analysis of light on the surface of the site, as well as any light spillage across the boundary line or the property line. They require that there's no light spillage. So these fixtures that we're proposing, which we've used on most recently on a project in Mansfield, have zero cutoff. They do not have light spillage. And so I can rest easy that these fixtures won't do that. We've used them before, and we can have, we are in the process of getting a photometric analysis to demonstrate that to planning and zoning. I don't know about this existing streetlight.
Yeah, maybe
You can see with the
Jonathan
link, yeah, but
could
that's-
provide, I mean, yeah.
I did ask for that more technical information. We just,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay. My other question is about the right below that existing light fixture, right by the Prosser there on the corner, there's that entry exit drive, which is currently exists today. However, it's only an exit. There's no entry into that drive. It's only exiting either left or right. Is this proposing that this be an entry drive now? Because
It will-
I don't know how that would work with all of the intersections there.
It will be entry and exit.
Is there going to be a traffic light that will guide that? Because there are multiple intersections there. I don't know how somebody would be able to turn left to enter that without a light.
They will not be allowed to turn left. This is an exit that's right turn only.
Okay.
And this was a part of the traffic study that was done and the report that was submitted to planning and zoning. The recommendation for traffic on this location is entrance only in this direction and exit
Okay.
right turn only. So it's a two-way drive.
Okay. So the entry would only be from the right.
That's
and
correct.
the exit would be from the right.
That's correct. And then
Okay, well, that I could understand. Because I know right now there's, it's a do not enter. There's no entry into that. There's only an exit. Okay,
There's-
that's good because I was never in favor of having them be able to turn, having a driver be able to turn left out of that driveway. Currently, they can turn left or right. Honestly, I
So-
don't know. I would never want to turn left at that corner from that drive because there's just so many things going on at that intersection. Okay, thank you for that. Last thing, maybe you already mentioned this and I apologize if I missed it, but is the bridge going to have the ice warmer thing on it?
So we want to discuss that. I think one of the items on Downs's agenda is alternates. And so the heating element in the bridge could be designed as an alternate. And if the committee wishes to get that design finished and priced, we can certainly do that. And Downs can add it as an alternate.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was on the alternate. Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You know, Patrick, I'm with you on your comments on the light fixtures.
Yeah,
But the other factor is that those existing street fixtures that are at the town green
mhm,
spill a tremendous amount of light, you know, out.
they do.
And so one of the criteria that we're trying to do here in general is the dark sky, you know, don't spill light up into the sky.
Right.
So, you know, I don't have the answer, because I agree it'd be nice to be uniform.
Maybe,
But you know, maybe we break out the parking area as different and keep
right.
lights closer to the building as something more similar. I don't know what the answer is. I think we've already taken quite a bold step in making the building different.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
you know, so maybe there's some justification in keeping it consistent with the building. So, and I'm just
Yeah.
throwing out ideas. So, but I think the point is well taken, and I think we
Okay.
should,
Yeah.
you know, and it sounds Richard's gonna, you know, be looking into that some more. So I think it's an unanswered.
Okay, good, because I know a lot of thought and a lot of time has gone into both the town green and the area directly in front of the town hall. You know, and I know that they're not finished with the town green and,
Yeah, I
you know,
think
but-
a lot of that was what was available from Eversource also,
mhm.
you know, because they provided those poles and lights. So
I wonder if there would be a way to use the post, you know, like if you look at that existing fixture, if you were to use the post, and is there a different sort of top that could go on there that would be the type that prevents the light from flowing?
yeah, I think that's the operative question there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Bob Berman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Richard, I have a practical question. How do Public Works get in there to change the bulbs on the bridge?
So these are fixtures that have a long life. They have their modern LED fixtures. They last, I can't tell you exactly how long they last, but they last a very long time. You wouldn't be changing these bulbs. They're tiny fixtures, and it's not the kind of item that you find in a typical store.
So you'll be changing the fixture when it goes out?
Basically, that's it. Once the fixture's life is done, you would replace the fixture.
And how would they get at that? Underneath, from the top?
Yeah, so you would get at it from underneath. I mean, the beauty of that kind of fixture is that it's exposed. It's not concealed. It's right there, but it's tiny. And the light source is within that fixture. You don't even see the bulb. And the light spills out and down, you know, so it shines directly over the walking surface. But this is located right there within easy.
Oh, okay. All right. So you get it at it from the top. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what it was at. Trying to figure out. All right.
Other questions for Richard? Elizabeth?
I had two questions. One might be more for the chair, and it's more procedural. So when the design review board makes recommendations Are TSKP bound by them, or how does that process work?
No, they are not bound by them. In fact, planning and zoning is not bound by the suggestions of the design review board either. They are merely suggestions.
So how does that work between TSKP's recommendations and the design review board's recommendations?
In terms of,
Well, it just sounds like a lot of what the design review board suggested, Richard has made those adjustments, and I was wondering about that.
I mean, we've given, in general, our architect license to design. So obviously he has taken the suggestions to heart in many cases here and gone along with them. And in other cases has not.
Okay.
So
I wanted to make sure, that's what I thought. I just wanted to verify that the architects are still taking the artistic license when needed with those recommendations. And then my next question was about where will it say Prosser Library? And will those signs be lit? And, you know, it would be ideal if, you know, it could, I mean, if it was up to me, it would be massively huge so that everybody knew. But I'm just curious where that will be and what look that will have.
I can show you, and I'm glad you brought it up. So here again is a view of the plaza at the entryway. There's an element located right here. Oh, and by the way, there are benches located here for the design review board's suggestion. There's an element located right here on the left side of the plaza as you approach the building. And what we're proposing is and there's also a retaining wall here because the slope of the site slopes down. So we're trying to create a level surface. It'll be pitched to drain, but a fairly level surface for the plaza. And then a wall here. And we're proposing a stone wall. And we're proposing that this element, which is the end of the retaining wall, be also a stone structure, as you can see here. And on top of the stone structure is an illuminated item, and it says Prosser Library on it. And this element on top is about 12 inches high. The letters are probably about 8 inches high, and this is an 8-foot long signage element.
And what direction does that face?
It faces Tunxus Avenue. It could be illuminated on both sides, so that it could also face people who are approaching toward the east on Mountain Avenue. So that element is right here.
I see.
So it could be viewed from Mountain Avenue, and it could be viewed from Tunxus. It could also be viewed from Park. You can see it.
Yeah, that would be great if it could be seen from both sides.
Richard, is that similar to the earlier renderings, even pre-referendum renderings had indicated a sign in that area? Do you recall, is this oriented basically the way it was shown there? I'm trying to remember how.
I believe so. I don't have that those graphics here on my screen, but
I think it was generally in that area.
I believe that's correct. I also have what we're proposing to show for McMahon, although I don't think it's on their agenda. I can share that with the committee if the committee wishes.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time we're really, we're seeing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor Davis?
Yeah, thank you. Richard, I wanted to ask, was there any thought to having illuminated signage on the inside the building up high so that you can see it when driving by and you can see it from blocks away? Like the Hartford Public Library downtown's got the HPL up high. You can, it's really attractive and you can see it from all directions pretty much.
Honestly, this is an element that Taisu designed, and I don't think he considered a sign at the top of the building, honestly. It
Yeah.
wasn't in his vision.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Let's see, don't see any more hands. Richard, I see, you pointed out some benches on the south side of the plaza. I see
Yep.
more benches on the north side of the plaza as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, let me see if I can get there.
I see some lines there that look like the same as more benches there.
Oh, yes, right,
yeah.
right here.
Okay.
So we have a row of benches on
Okay.
that side as well.
And then the species of trees looks like they've changed.
Yes. So there were recommendations made by, I can't remember, Design Review Board or by Wetlands or both. But yes, Richter and Segan has listened. They have made those adjustments in the species of the proposed trees.
Yeah, Stewart Grove, is that what that says there below to the south of the building? Stewardia Grove, and the same across over on the Riley property.
Yeah, I
I
believe
believe I think that got momentum initially from the beautification committee.
yeah, I think you're right. I think it was the beautification.
We've been talking to a lot of people.
Yeah, so those species have changed in those areas.
Okay.
I think previously they were birch. Is that
That's
accurate?
correct.
Okay?
I believe they were river birch.
Yeah, and thank you for showing that potential future pedestrian connection to
here.
the west, yeah,
Yeah.
to the plaza. I think we need to do the same thing to the north. At least be aware of how this is going to connect to across somebody else's property, but eventually to Philly Park.
Right, there's a neighboring parcel here, and then beyond that is Philly Park.
Right.
There does need to be some sort of easement to get through this neighboring parcel.
Right.
But yes, that is the intention.
Okay. Yeah, we need to know how we're eventually going to be doing that, because that really ties in with Ty Sue's initial
Right.
concept of, the
There's
whole pedestrian thing all the way down from Philly Park and through the property across the town green, all that.
Right.
Okay.
Or maybe this parcel that's the neighboring parcel. I see
No, you had it right the first time.
here.
Yeah, that's actually a leg from the shopping plaza.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I
Yeah.
see. Can I just quickly show you McMahon?
Absolutely.
Okay, again, even though it's not on their agenda, we are going to bring this presentation. We forward it as a PDF today for their use tomorrow. But one of the biggest changes here on this site is that you may recall that there was a retention basin planned in this green area here. That's been eliminated. And so drainage will be accomplished with underground structures. It'll be sheet flow off the parking area. And I think this is a great improvement. Not much else has changed other than the light fixtures. Again, we're proposing similar kinds of light fixtures for McMahon. Bollard light fixtures would be here and here to illuminate the walkways and approaches to the building. And parking lot light fixture would be like this on poles to provide illumination of the parking lot. Again, these fixtures are zero cutoffs because according to the rules, we can't have light pollution and spilling out of the site or up toward the sky. Any questions on McMahon?
Lois.
Sure, at some point, we were discussing whether or not there would be room to have benches in front of the building. How was that resolved?
I think we do have benches, and I do think they're incorporated into the building facade here in this location. Sorry, Oh, yes, it's illustrated here. There's an area for seating right at the building, and there's also benches out along the walkway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're illustrated here.
Any other questions? All right, well, we have our town engineer and Public Works Department to thank for these really great changes, elimination of the service drive, elimination of the detention basin. So it's all very positive. So thanks to them again for getting involved and helping us out. I don't see any other questions for Richard. Oh, Nancy, I noticed Erica is in the attendees.
She's showing up as she can speak.
Okay,
She shows up in the screen.
thank you.
Okay.
All right, so let's go on to our construction manager. We've got Scott and Kyle.
Good evening, everyone. For our update, we're going to talk about schedule and we'll reiterate the list of alternates and possible change made there for an alternate. In regards to the project update for the schedule, so we are now past DD design into CD design. The design team has some further reviews coming up for planning and zoning and wetlands in the middle of December. Currently, the design team has submitted all their paperwork to MDC for the encroachment permit, and that is under review. We have possible early trade procurement documents that we're going to review for the end of December. 50% CD drawings are for submission to start our estimate are for the middle of December, the 19th. With the estimate following at the beginning of the new year. And 100% CD construction documents, drawings ready for bid are currently scheduled for January 30th of next year. Along with the building permit set review, which will follow immediately after. And the deep permit still for the end of February. For our bidding schedule update, we'll look to prepare any early packages or early procurement items for the second week of January. Going into February with bid packages going out. The remainder of all the bid packages to go out to subcontractors for bid with any addendum will be for the entire month of February going into March. Currently, our schedule shows between February 14th and the 27th for relocation of the owner from libraries to a swing space. And the town approving GMP early procurement costs for GMP for the beginning of March. And final approvals of the GMP for April 10th. And also don't want to forget about relocating the internet hub for towards the end of March 20th, as a deadline to get the internet hub relocated, which I believe is by the state. Is that correct, Nancy?
Kind of.
Yeah,
CEN is a state agency, so yes.
state agency.
But they're working with the town's consultant, IT consultant on that.
Okay. Any questions on design schedule updates and bidding schedule updates before I move on?
Yes,
Bob Berman?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. When are you planning to go out for demolition bidding?
Yeah, so it will most likely be the bid period of February 7th through March. I don't know that we'll be able to do it for early January, but there might be some procurement items that we may have to address with the committee for that time.
All right, so we're talking about the month of February going out for demolition bids.
Yeah, along with every other package.
Yeah, all right. That says to me that demolition probably isn't going to start till April.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Elizabeth?
What does GMP stand for?
It's our guaranteed maximum price to the town. So that's the construction manager guaranteeing the cost of construction, notwithstanding any change orders that happen during construction, based on the budget that's developed from the construction documents and the bids, frankly, the bids that are received.
Okay, so I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chip?
Yeah, thank you. So as we are going through the contract for the lease and movers and everything else, you're showing now that our relocation is the month of February, not the month of January, but we're not talking about demo until April. So when do we really need to have the libraries available to you? Just, don't want to be incurring costs for lease too early. We need to be scheduling movers, everything else. Where do you
Yep.
see the kind of the drop dead date to work backwards from?
Well, at the moment, it looks to be February, due to the fact that there's been many comments from the town departments, as you may be aware, from wetlands and planning and zoning, that have pushed the design out a little further, a couple weeks, due to having to resolve those issues.
But if we're not talking about demo until April, do we really need to be out in March, or do we need to be out in February?
Well, I guess that remains to be seen, Chip, and I suppose we can talk about that further in an
Okay.
owner meeting.
Yep.
But at the moment, that's the way we have the flow.
Okay.
I would think I'm gonna say that we don't want to be on the cusp of starting construction.
Understood.
Coming out of the building, and I
Right.
think there need to be some time there, and there's also going to need to be some permits that are pulled for disconnecting the electrical services and the water services. And we just can't have the building occupied during that time. And we need to be able to give ourselves time after February going into construction to accommodate for those items. And I don't believe any of that has really changed in the amount of time between construction versus when the owner moves in. It's just been a shift of those dates.
Okay.
And we come to realization with a lot of these, design items that we're facing and getting through.
Right. All right. I just don't, I don't want to incur costs for extended swing space that we don't need.
I don't want you to either, believe me. And if we see a better way, we'll definitely talk about it.
All right. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Elizabeth, is that previous hand or new hand?
I just wanted to say that for library staff, the longer we can stay in the buildings, the better. And I also wanted to ask about if we have and I don't know when this would happen, like a breaking ground ceremony, when that would be playing in. And I was also wondering if we could put tentative opening dates, just as we're trying to think through how we're going to be doing our next wave of outreach about the building projects.
So I think it would be prudent to address tentative opening dates when we are looking pretty good with CD documents, Elizabeth. And although our schedule does show, a closeout date, it's just those dates have been shifting, since the summer, since this has started. So we really want to get to a point where we know we're going out to bid. And at the moment, this is reflecting that. We just want to make sure we hit that before we start advertising things of that importance. And I know that's important, believe me. And as far as the ground breaking goes, that can start a couple weeks before construction. And we're pretty good about putting those together and getting everyone who needs to be there. And we can certainly coordinate that with you as well.
So would that be more of a late spring thing?
The groundbreaking?
Yes.
I think it's definitely April. I think we want to know the GMP is approved and we can pull the trigger and get it going. But yeah, could be mid-spring. It could be happening not long, a couple weeks right after that date. But yeah, you're mid-spring.
We could decide whether it occurs prior to demolition or at the conclusion of demolition. depending on how you want to look at.
We've done it both ways. I know a lot
Yeah.
of clients like to do it before the shovel really goes in the ground. They want to be the first shovel, but some people are different. Sometimes it depends on the weather and how how you need to hit the ground running, you know? But we'll definitely come to a determination with everybody and talk about that.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Bob Berman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One comment about the timing for the libraries moving out. That's changed by 2 weeks. Because we were looking at middle January to early February. Now we're looking at the month of February.
2 weeks, yep.
Yeah, so that's just a 2 week change. So again,
Yep.
the timing still seems to fit with what we've been looking at going backwards.
Yeah.
My other comment is that rather than groundbreaking, maybe we want to have sledgehammer day. When you're going to start demolition, everybody takes a sledgehammer to the building.
All right, hold that thought, Bob, please. All right,
Listen.
Scott, I'll let you continue on with your other items here.
Okay. I think Lois has her hand up. I just saw it. I
Oh.
didn't.
Go ahead, Lois.
I was just gonna react to the sledgehammer. Some people will not be happy to see their old library being taken down. So I think, it's gonna be on all sides. So let's be careful.
Thanks, Lois.
Okay.
All right,
Patrick has his
Yeah,
hand
I'm
up.
sorry, Mr. Chair, real quick.
Oh, yeah.
I just noticed right here, Scott, where you talk about the relocated town internet hub. Could you just tell me does the Prosser have its own separate internet hub? I would think the internet hub is, within the
No,
town
it's
hall.
the internet hub for the entire town, the center of town is located at Prosser.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. That's
So it
interesting.
serves several buildings.
Okay, so where's that going?
It will go over to town hall.
Town hall. Okay. All right. Thank you. That makes sense.
And that's a permanent move, not a
That's
temporary.
correct.
That's good. Yeah.
So
But
Patrick,
like-
we will not take any sledgehammers to the building until that is properly moved.
We
All right.
appreciate that.
That's
Scott.
good. That's good.
All right.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. So item C gets into the McMahon State Library grant schedule. So as of this week, that's been approved, and congratulations to all of you and your hard work to the library staff. So I guess I might need a few updates myself here if anyone wants to chime in, but I'm going by the email that was sent that Elizabeth had presented from the State Library grant. So this week it looks, actually for the 28th, it looks that the town was to send the notification that local funding is in place. And this was a letter on a town letterhead signed by the town manager, scanned and sent as an email attachment. So I don't know if anyone can comment on that, if that has been completed.
I believe we already did that.
Okay.
I need to double check with the state library that what we submitted was still good to go, but we needed to do that also in order to make sure we made it on the bond schedule.
Okay, so yeah, as long as that's been done, that triggers the commission on the 9th to move forward and approve the allocation of the grant. So after that allocation for the fund has been approved, then the town is sending a hard copy with all the attachments for notifying CHRO. So these are all the requirements that were done with Prosser that would just follow suit, just like Prosser and except for McMahon. Also in mid-December, if all goes well at the bonding commissioning meeting and between the 12th and the 16th, the state library will sign the grant and send a copy of the completed contract to the town manager of Bloomfield. And then, by that time, it'll be a little early based on the schedule that we have now and all that's happened by providing a draft invitation to bid and RFP. I think we will have a little time on that, but that's something that we do have to put together, as well as the advertisement and how that's going to look for the state library grants review. And we have to do that for both Prosser and McMahon. And, we'll have that available once we've gone through the CD documents. And I see that happening more in January. And that way, that will lead us, once they approve how that all looks, our invitation to bid in the advertisement, to publicly advertising and soliciting for the bid on the DAS websites and the newspapers and all the avenues of advertising that we typically do in a bid, but also on what the grant stipulates. And moving right into the Community Investment Fund, also what they stipulate in their statutes, which we have. And that is also up for commission approval on the 9th, from what I understand, as well in December. So any questions or comments on the grants? Because I see some hands. I'll let Mark.
Lois?
I can continue to be concerned when I see that it says our new POCD needs to have been approved. As far as I know, nobody's even working on it yet. And I'm going with Elizabeth's comments that say that we have been given an extension or given some kind of reassurance that if our plan of development is not done, we will be going with the old one. But this says the new one has to be enforced and adopted. So could we please clarify that? Because it could be a serious problem.
That was, Lois, if I could semi-answer your question, the CIF required that as well, and we got a waiver for the CIF part. So the state is accepting waivers in the meantime, and I do believe actually the POCD the kickoff starts today or tomorrow. So the town has selected somebody to do that work. Obviously, there's been a delay because of the changeover in staff and the building and land use departments, but that is moving forward. However, that's a 9-month to a year process.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
and the state does provide for any grant that municipality submits, we would have to get a waiver on a project by project basis.
But we have no doubt that we will get the waiver.
We've gotten them for all the grants that we've submitted. In addition, I'm talking about grants other than ones for the library.
Okay,
We've
thank you
submitted
very
grants
much.
for other things in the meantime, and we've gotten the OPM's waiver for each of
It's
those.
probably easier now that they're actually working on it to get the waiver. Thank you.
Yeah, Scott, if you would just correct that, bring us up to speed with the waiver instead of that language there.
Sure, I can
So
do
we
that.
don't have any confusion. Thanks.
Yep.
I mean, we wouldn't have gotten this far in the process without the waiver in place.
Yep.
Okay. Other questions for Scott? If none, then let's move on. Thanks, Scott. And Kyle for joining
Oh,
us.
I actually have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm
Nancy.
sorry, he didn't mention anything. The MBE outreach that was on your schedule, Scott. So that was initially intended for the middle of December. Is that going to stay, or do you plan on pushing that out as well?
Well, we're in the middle of it right now. The PO is out to Dwight Bolton. It's all signed. I'm currently going through the estimate and breaking out costs for bid packages so we can understand. And for those of you who don't know, bid packages are items for certain contractors to bid. For instance, you'll have a ceiling bid package, so ceiling contractors will bid on that. You'll have an electrical bid package where only electricians bid it. And some of those packages can be divvied up into MWBE bidders only. And so that is currently what I'm going through this week in order to develop the information and advertisement that we want to get out there for the outreach. So that way Dwight can do his job, which will ultimately lead to the community outreach that we're hoping to do in December. I haven't settled on a date yet. I'm trying to get through that information first so that we can arrive to that date.
Okay. My second question is maybe one that I should wait and ask Tom. Do you know the status of the project labor agreement?
I do not. It's not been brought to my attention as of yet.
Okay, I know Scott, I mean, I know Tom was working on it. I just didn't know if you had an update and I should.
No, I don't have an update.
Okay.
I know he's been in talks with Joe Toner. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I can tell, there's no new information to report at this time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Scott? Okay, let's move on to our OPM. Chip?
Thank you very much. I'm going to be relatively brief right now because things are, in process. We are currently the lease is with the lawyers. So, once that's finalized, we can share exactly where that stands. The contract for the commissioning agent, Nancy and I have gone through, and that is being reviewed by town council in order to get that relationship finalized with Van Zelm.
When Chip says counsel, he means counsel, COUNSEL, as in
Yes,
the town
sorry.
attorney.
Yes, I mean the town attorney. Yes. The other spelling, yes. And then on the move, working with the second bidder, going to probably look to try to get into the library on Monday. If that works, Elizabeth, I don't have that finalized, just to walk the movers through similar to what we did with Meyer. But I'll hopefully be able to finalize that schedule on tomorrow, because I'm going to be in town Monday for some other things. So it works out well to try to do that. And then updating the milestone schedule for the swing space and moves, which is why I was, wanted to clarify the schedule changes so that we can, right now it was focused on the approval process, but we want to have that same milestone schedule for the actual implementation. So we know, exactly when packing starts, when we're going to, look to set up a pop-up computer area to serve during while the building is closed, before the swing space opens, all those kinds of things. So we're going to, putting together that schedule as well, and modifying that to meet the current schedule, looking towards the end of February rather than the end of January. And that's it for now.
All right, questions, Elizabeth?
Chip, does this mean we're not going with Meyer as the movers?
We need to get a second price. So that's what I'm working with, is to get a
Oh, I
second
see.
price.
And also, I know that we've asked to see the lease, my department as well as Public Works, and we have yet to see it. When are we going to be able to see a copy of that?
As I understand, once the attorneys have finalized terms, then we can share that.
Okay. And then my last question is, I know I keep up bringing my concerns about Wittenberry Mall and public perception and various issues around that. I was wondering if instead of signing a lease for the full amount of time, if we should consider maybe signing a one-year lease first, and then only renewing if it is indeed what it was we were hoping to get out of that space. Or perhaps only having that space until Wittenberry, McMahon Wittenberry Library is ready to open.
I think that's a good item for discussion. We had talked about that in the past, whether you guys would stay in the swing space once Wittenberry McMahon was completed. And right now we were saying yes, but if you want to entertain getting out of the swing space, when that project is completed, that's certainly favorable, from a cost perspective, if that's what you want to pursue. And
I mean, if everything is wonderful in Wittenberry Mall, which could happen, I mean, we would perhaps be interested in extending if the public was liking the space and, but there is a good chance that we wouldn't want to stay for the duration of the Prosser build. So I do think it's something we should bring to the table for maybe further discussion.
Well, it sounds like in these lease negotiations, it would make sense to give us that option. That we could get out at a year point if we wanted to. And just have that option as we move forward. Does that make sense to you, Elizabeth?
Yeah, we could
Yes.
change the, right now we're looking at a 22-month and then renewal after that. So we could change those durations that we can say 12 months with a, with a, 6-month renewal at one rate and then another month to month after that or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think Chip, you can continue to work with the town attorney, on that goal.
Yep.
Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, while we're on that topic, then just to follow up with what Elizabeth was saying, I mean, what if during that year's time, we found, for example, we decide to keep the swing space and not move to Winterberry, but during that year's time, we're able to find a better space or a bigger space, or, so we wouldn't be limited then past that 12-month lease. Maybe that's a really good option to keep that open, because suppose it doesn't work out in the current space, this current swing space, say, it's just not a good fit and we have to be there till say Winterberry's done. But then if we decide to keep swing space and something in the meantime comes up that's a better fit, a bigger space, a better location, would we be able to have that as an option?
Yeah, well, again, that's going to be up to the attorneys to negotiate, but I think it's something we should have them negotiate. Sounds like.
I would also, though, caution that would have additional costs as well, because now you're going to have to do the moving, you're going to have to make sure the space
Sure.
is,
Mhm.
so there will be additional costs that would be incurred, for the moving and the storage and all of that. So
That's
not to say it can't be done, it's just something else to consider.
Mhm. Yeah, just
during-
throwing it
during
out
that
as a-
period. Yeah.
But that's a good, I didn't factor that in. Okay, so then my quick question for Chip. So Chip, I know the town council meeting was canceled this past Monday. So I just wanted to make sure, was there anything on your milestones that you were needing the town council to do at this last meeting that can't be, pushed off or?
No, I think that given the fact that things are slid 2 weeks anyway, we
Okay.
have time for to still get that final town council approval. I'm not concerned about it yet.
Okay, all right, that's it. Okay, thank you.
Lois?
Well, I just would comment that I think that if the owner were listening to this discussion, he might raise his rates on the basis that we are not very clear on how long we want to be there. And he may have his own plans for needing to rent the space for 22 months or more than that. And if we say, gee, we may not be there the whole time, he may decide that he needs to charge more. I just think you have to look on both sides. Certainly, we need to have a place to put all of this and conduct the library business. And we have looked and looked and looked, and this is what we found. And it may not be perfect, but it's temporary. Let's get something we can count on, we can be sure of, and that we don't get kicked out in the middle of this project or make it more expensive than it needed to be because we can't be clear on what we actually want.
Your point is well taken, and that's why it's in the hands of the attorneys. Anything we ask for from the landlord, it translates to money, of course. So, whether we, I'm encouraged to hear that, we're open to that option of possibly ending our swing space time at the end of 12 months. Whether we can do that in terms of a lease is still up in the air, but at least it's an option we're open to at this point. And whether we can fulfill that or not, we'll see. I think we've got good people working on it for us. I know we do. Our town attorney and Nancy are making good efforts in making all that happen. So it just gives us one more door, one more possibility. I think Ava, you were next.
Thanks. I think the idea is when you sign a lease with an option to renew, you have the option to renew, you build that in. So I think this is best, as Mark has said, left up to the negotiation of the attorneys. Thanks.
Thanks, Ava. Back to, let's see, Bob Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to point out that when the initial discussions with the owner of Wittenberry Mall were held, we were talking $35,000 for a year, which is 12 months. And everything else was prorated around that. So that number doesn't seem to be an issue because we were talking about 12 months with monthly options after that. And he seemed to be okay with that initially. So that space has been empty for a long time. And he has over half of the mall is empty, as I'm sure many of you know.
All right, so we may be in good shape there. We'll see. Anything else for Chip or from Chip? Okay.
All right, thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, Chip. Committees, Elizabeth, I know you're anxious to get a package outreach. So we still have to finalize a few things here schedule wise, I think, but I know you're working on that.
Yeah, we'll be ready to move once we have some more finalized dates.
Okay, thank you. And our programming technology committee with Leah, I think things are in good hands.
Yes, things are in good hands and moving along. I know that Chris has been doing a lot of stuff about the technology still. And I think Leah's power went out. I don't know if anybody else's power went out, but that's why she's not here.
Okay. Okay. All right. Questions on those items? Let's see any hands. All right. So let's go on to Nancy. You have the 2023 meeting schedule to present to us.
Yes, we're required to file with the town clerk on an annual basis, our annual meeting schedule. So I just rolled it forward every 2 weeks, same time. I did check for conflicts with holidays. The only conflict we had was the first meeting in April, which was Passover. So I have eliminated that from it. So there will be only one meeting in April, unless we want to add another one as a special meeting, but that was the only one I found. I ran this by some of our Jewish colleagues so that I wouldn't miss that. And obviously I compared it against the town's other schedule of holidays. So I would entertain a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Berman, second by Mr. Ike. Discussion. Ava.
Yeah, thanks. When I was looking through the dates, and this isn't part of my background, so I don't know, but I did notice that February 22nd is Ash Wednesday. We've had people question having meetings on religious dates of significance before. Is that going to be a problem? I'm just curious. I don't know myself, but I just noticed it was there, and I wouldn't want anyone to feel that we were encroaching.
Yeah, Nancy, do you know the town's position on Ash Wednesday? Is there any?
I think I've actually attended meetings on Ash Wednesday in the past, to be honest with you. But I'm, like to hear if anybody, I don't know if the town has a position on it, Ava. If the building committee is uncomfortable with it, we can remove it. Except that's right in the middle of when we've got a couple of big things going on, so.
I just wondered because a gentleman had come to the meeting and had asked about a date which we actually weren't meeting on, but he was upset. I know Bob has expressed reservations when other programs have happened on a holiday that was significant. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to upset somebody. So that was the only reason I asked.
I mean,
Mark and Nancy,
I'm
the
okay
hand,
remaining flexible, on it. We can always cancel.
Mark and Nancy, the hand that's up is not me. That's actually Chris Grant.
Oh,
Okay.
Phone.
hey, welcome, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, I'll let this part of the discussion, just had a question back to Elizabeth. But wait, when we talked, she was giving her report about information that's going to be shared out with the community. I just wondered what that package looks like. What are we thinking about? What does that look like?
Well, I think the process is going to be, Elizabeth's putting things together. I also recently learned that India Rogers, what's her title now, Nancy? For the town?
Community and government. I don't want to mess it up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, really, she's now in charge of kind of press releases in general from the town, as I see it. So I would like to get her
I think the
involved.
word communications,
What is it, Bob?
communications, I believe.
I think strategic communications is in
Right.
there.
Yeah, it's a long title, but the bottom line is I think it'll be proper to involve her, and then I see it coming back to this committee before it goes out.
My point is, are we intending to get this information out before the end of the year? Or is this something we're forecasting for the beginning of the new year? And I just wondered what's been our frequency of communicating with the community about the project?
I think we want to get it out as soon as possible once we're confident on our swing space, on our schedule in general. And I think that's very soon.
Yeah, okay.
Because I really don't want to release a lot of information or any information, then suddenly have to change things. People want to know when things are going to be happening. So schedule's a major element in this, obviously. Frequency. So we really haven't done a lot since referendum. That was our major push. And we've been working on this design now for a year, a little over a year. So I can't say we have. It's more like coordinated with the milestones of the project rather than some set interval of time that happens. So I think once we have the schedule locked down and we can share dates and locations, and then perhaps when around the groundbreaking time as well would be appropriate to do that, along with what Downs is doing for outreach to contractors. So all that is happening at the same time.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
I just wanted to say that we will also be doing a lot of information sharing about where we will be. I feel like that's the one thing people are most nervous about in the community, wanting to know where we will be in the next phase. So even if we don't have all of the information in terms of timeline, we will have that hopefully nailed down very soon.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
So we have a motion on the floor to accept our 2023 meeting schedule. Any other comments? Right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Anybody abstaining? And we are unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Nancy.
Great, thank you.
All right, meetings coming up. Committee meetings are the December 14th and 28th. I will not be around on the 14th, so Bob Berman will take over for me. Thank you, Bob. And there's many things that have been mentioned here tonight. We've got Design Review Board tomorrow night, the 1st. There's wetlands on the 12th. There's the town council on the 12th regarding swing space. There is the CEEC we are going to on December 8th. That's a revisit with them to give them an update on the design. And planning and zoning on December 15th. So a lot of happenings, a lot of meetings going on. 1, 2, 3. I mentioned 5 of them there, plus our own meetings. So as always, please let us know if you're not going to be able to make our regular meetings in advance.
Mr. Chair, Patrick here. I won't be able to make the 12/28, the second meeting of December. I will be away, so I won't be able to make that.
Thank you, Patrick.
I will be here on the 12th, though.
14th is the next one.
Oh, 14th, I'm sorry, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Comments from the committee? Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of things for the architects and towns to keep in mind and consider. One of the things that's happening at 330 Park Avenue is in the rooms that are used quite a bit, that have carpet tiles in them. Public Works has been replacing carpet tiles and are now changing from carpet tiles over to other material for the simple reason that too many spills on the carpet tiles with liquids or food dropped on them makes it very difficult to keep them clean, and they need to be replaced more often than anticipated. So you might want to keep that in mind, for instance, for community rooms where the cafes are, those types of areas, maybe you don't want to use carpet in that. Something to keep in mind, because we're learning at 330 Park Avenue, it becomes an issue, even though it looks nice. I wanted to bring that up just so everybody's aware of it in advance before we get there. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Other hands? All right. Nancy, do we have anybody from the public with their hand up?
Let's see. If there's anybody from the public who'd like to speak, please raise your hand. It looks like no one offering to speak.
Okay, I guess we put them to sleep. Maybe, I don't know. But no, thank you all for attending. All right, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Ike. And
Second.
seconded by Lois.
Lois.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion passes. Thank you all very much. And